Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So first, let's look at the topics that we're going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 11 topics for a detailed and comprehensive coverage. Along with discussing these topics, we will also look at one or two important PIB articles. The idea is to ensure that there has to be a holistic coverage of current affairs and you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. Now, before we start, I have a couple of very important announcements. If you're looking to enroll with our IAS classes to prepare for 2027 and beyond, this is the right opportunity because starting from today, we are launching the Elevate batch. 2 classes per day, starting with history and geography by Abhishek sir and Mukesh sir. And this would be the perfect time to enroll as Unacademy is providing the lowest price ever at 16,999. Those interested, please check out the link provided in the description box below and don't forget to enter the code IAS English. And those of you who are preparing for 2026 mains, if you want the best guidance possible, especially for the static portion, for current affairs, for answer writing practice and test evaluation, then we are launching Concom Mains 2026, which will give you access to dedicated mains lectures by your top educators covering both the static portion and current affairs that is relevant for the upcoming mains exam. You will also get classes by the toppers of last year's civil services exam who will conduct special sessions on answer writing practice. Plus, the program will include the mains test series along with evaluation of your answer copies within 48 hours and as well as the required notes and study material for the mains examination. So this program is available at 9,999 and the program has just started. So again, if you're interested, please check out the details by clicking on the link in the description below. With this, let's get started and look at the first topic. On page number 8, there's a detailed article on the practice of suo motu cognizance of cases that is taken up by the Supreme Court. Of late, there is an increasing trend where the Supreme Court is voluntarily picking up certain cases on its own motion without a litigation or a petition being filed. And this trend has been increasing. It has been going up, be it in civil matters or be it in criminal matters as well. So this topic is being examined in this article in detail. So what do you mean by suo motu cognizance? Suo motu is a Latin word. It is Latin for on your own motion, as in at your own initiative. So Supreme Court of India has been exercising suo motu jurisdiction and picking up certain cases on its own. Recently, one of the most high-profile cases that has captured media attention, the Twisha Sharma death case. This has grabbed the attention of national media. It pushed the Supreme Court to step in, and the writers, they raised some very uncomfortable, difficult questions in this regard. The practice of Supreme Court being driven by the media narrative and taking up such suo motu cases, how does it impact the judiciary? While the Twisha Sharma case does require an honest and transparent investigation regarding alleged dowry-related harassment and a possible abetment to suicide or even allegations of murder are present. So while the case requires a thorough investigation and justice to be done, if at all necessary, the Supreme Court taking up suo motu cognizance in cases where only media attention is present is quite troubling. Now, this is where we need to go a little deeper into the topic. Now, when you look at the history of suo motu cognizance in Indian judiciary, it all primarily started during and post the emergency period. So after the emergency period of the mid-1970s, that's when the Supreme Court started entertaining suo motu cognizance of cases. Parallelly, this corresponded with the PIL phase, the public interest litigation phase in the early 1980s. Here, the Supreme Court was driven with a good intention to secure justice to the backward sections, to the underprivileged sections, and the disadvantaged groups, which otherwise may not be able to easily access the judiciary and secure justice. So, along with the PIL innovation, which started gaining popularity from 1980s onwards, parallelly, the Supreme Court would once in a while take up certain suo motu cases on its own. So, while there is a good intention behind it to take up cases which are generally not heard of or to secure justice to disadvantaged groups, there is a troubling trend with regard to such suo motu cognizance of cases, especially when the cases have received a lot of media attention. So, does it mean the Supreme Court is being driven by the media narrative? Does it result in an inherent bias in the case, an institutional bias towards the case, even before the investigation can happen? Now, if you take the Twisha Sharma death, there are certain controversial circumstances surrounding the death. The husband being a lawyer, the mother in law being a judge. There is an accusation of the possible dowry related motive and harassment at the place of the in laws. But however, the principle of natural justice is that one needs to be presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. But if you look at how the case has progressed, the lower court, which is currently handling the case, has already ordered the husband into police custody. The Bar Council of India has revoked his license, his legal practice license, prohibiting him from legal practice. And the Madhya Pradesh High Court has already entered the picture as well, and it has recommended a second autopsy. Then Madhya Pradesh government, the state government, which has also come under a lot of pressure, has been considering the idea to hand over the case to CBI. So in the middle of this, when the Supreme Court intervenes and takes up suo motu cognizance, just because the case is grabbing media attention, then there is a risk that the Supreme Court could basically subvert or end up undermining the lower judiciary. It also creates a very bad example, a bad precedent, that is the Supreme Court being driven by the media narrative, because the same Supreme Court bars the media from reporting on these cases or reporting eyewitness accounts. Yes, it is important to protect the sanctity of the case and the eyewitnesses, but the same Supreme Court, which is being driven by the media narrative, later gags the media to not report on the cases. So, what should be the way forward? Why do certain cases grab the attention of the Supreme Court? Why not the other several cases that occur in the country? Because, see, according to National Crime Records Bureau, the NCRB, 6,000 plus dowry related deaths have been reported in India with a conviction rate of hardly 11 to 17%. So the question is, where was the Supreme Court? Where was the judiciary when thousands of these cases were being reported? Just because one case has grabbed media attention and the media is running with it, does it mean the Supreme Court needs to pay special attention to it? Won't that undermine the lower courts which are already dealing with the case? So, what is the right way forward? The writers say that this practice of Supreme Court taking up suo motu cognizance reminds us of the Mughal era. In the Mughal period, Emperor Jahangir, when he ascended the throne, he introduced a system where a chain was hung outside his palace, and he told the subjects that if you don't get justice through our administration, you come and pull the chain outside my palace to draw my attention, so that the emperor himself would intervene based on the attention that was drawn by pulling of the chain. So the writers are drawing a parallel with this. Here, Jahangir was basically trying to address the inefficiency of his bureaucracy and administration. Now, is the Supreme Court doing pretty much the same? By regularly entertaining suo motu cases, only in incidents where media attention has been grabbed, is it just trying to show that it is doing something? Is it just trying to project this symbolic activism while hundreds and thousands of similar cases are languishing with absolutely no progress in those cases? So, what we require is well planned judicial reforms which can ensure that the lower judiciary is capable of handling these cases and the Supreme Court and the High Courts can maintain the required oversight. See, when such cases come up, there are two options available. One is the easy path, where in some select cases, Supreme Court will take up a suo motu cognizance and it will project itself that it is acting on these matters. The other path is a hard and difficult path. It is not as spectacular as Supreme Court taking up suo motu notice of these popular cases. It is very silent, it happens unnoticed, where judicial reforms will bring about better access to justice, deliver equitable justice. So the Supreme Court appears to be choosing the easier path over the difficult path of focusing on judicial reforms. We have seen this with many other cases in the past as well. Take the RG Kar Medical College rape case, for example, the Hathras Stampede case, for example, the Nirbhaya gang rape incident. Some cases, they do grab greater media attention because of the nature of the case, the circumstances of the case, or the kind of violence that was reported in a particular criminal case. See, in no way the article or we are undermining the victims of these cases. Yes, these cases require thorough investigation. It requires a certain degree of push from the Supreme Court as well and oversight to be maintained to ensure transparency in the case. But there are many similar cases or even more horrific cases of similar nature which keep on languishing, which may never reach the doorsteps of the court. And that is where judicial reforms becomes necessary to address these issues. Just being driven by what's going viral or what the media is focusing on, where the national attention is focused upon. The Supreme Court might be projecting itself as a hero, as a savior, right? But on the ground, nothing changes. Let's say a similar dowry related death case comes up in other part of the country. Maybe it doesn't grab enough media attention, right? So then there is no such intervention by the Supreme Court. And also regular intervention with the courts, even when lower courts are already handling it, will end up subverting and undermining the lower judiciary. So what needs to be done is for the Supreme Court to take the difficult path of reforms. For example, the Supreme Court can work better with the high courts as per the provisions of Article 235 to maintain control over subordinate courts. The high courts have that responsibility under Article 235 to maintain control and oversight over subordinate courts. And the Supreme Court needs to work with the high courts to facilitate this. The Supreme Court will have to work with state governments to ensure that judicial infrastructure is strengthened at the grassroots. And this requires funding. The Supreme Court will have to work with the state governments to ensure adequate funding is available to support judicial infrastructure at the lower level, to support the lower courts. The Supreme Court can work with the executive to ensure timely judicial appointments are made. Ensure that the vacancies in lower courts are filled on time so that there is no huge backlog of cases and swift justice can be delivered. So filling up those vacancies, working with the executive to ensure timely judicial appointments. And the Supreme Court can also work with the National Judicial Academy, which is responsible for training the judges of lower courts. Particularly with regard to local magistrates and district level courts and session courts. The training happens through the National Judicial Academy. The Supreme Court can work with the institution to ensure better training of the judges and better placement of the judges so that this can result in better handling of such cases which are coming up. This can ensure much more fair and equitable delivery of justice instead of one piecemeal approach where Supreme Court pays special attention to certain cases which are only grabbing the media attention. So let me know what you think about this. Because see, if you look at the trend, It's quite concerning. In the last few years, the number of suo motu cases they have gone up significantly at the Supreme Court. In fact, between 2020 to 24, 35 suo motu cases have been taken up. Now, when you look at the past 15 years data, in last 15 years, hardly 31 suo motu cases were taken up. And now, in just 4 to 5 years, 35 such cases have been taken up. Even if you look at the year-on-year data as well, 10 such cases were taken up in 2020, 8 in 2021, just 1 in 2022. But again, it started increasing, 4 in 2023, 12 in 2024, and it's the same with 2025 and 2026. And this excludes other regular suo motu cases like contempt of court or suo motu transfer of cases from one court to another or one bench to another. Excluding those cases, these are the numbers, which is quite significant. So this is a selective piecemeal approach instead of focusing on the harder task, which is to achieve judicial reforms. So please think about this topic, deliberate on this, and let me know what is your view, and take up this question for your answer writing practice. Now let's move to the next article. On page number 6, there's an article related to India's relations with Canada. India-Canada relations were very badly affected between 2023 and 2025. This was probably one of the lowest points in India-Canada relationship. But today, in the past few months, this relationship is being revived. It is being set on the right trajectory, and there is a great potential that exists for the India-Canada relationship. Earlier this year, in February 2026, the new Canadian PM Mark Carney carried out a historic and high-profile visit to India. This has now been followed by a visit from Piyush Goyal, India's Minister for Commerce and Industry. These high-profile visits, they have set the stage for the new era of India-Canada relations. So let's quickly understand why this relationship is so important. What can both countries gain from it? Why was the relationship affected from 2023 to 2025? And what can be done going forward? Now, when you look at Canada, Canada is home to a very large Indian diaspora. Since the colonial times, Canada has been home to a large Indian diaspora community, particularly the Sikh community from the Punjab region. Today, Canada is home to 1.8 million people of Indian origin, constituting roughly 5.1% of the country's population. That is 18 lakh people. Some of them being Indian citizens, some of them being of Indian origin or Indian descent. So they form a very strong cultural bond between the two countries. They establish very close people-to-people relations between the two nations. And today, the Indian community is a thriving community in Canada. They've contributed to the Canadian economy. Many community leaders and members of the community have risen up in the Canadian society, entering Canadian politics, joining key government positions, becoming ministers, cabinet ministers in the Canadian government. So there is a significant contribution of the Indian community for the uptick that you see in India-Canada relations and in general for the Canadian economy and Canadian politics. So this is one of the key binding factors. And also, Canada is blessed with immense resources. It is blessed with natural resources. It's not just a massive country in terms of its size, in terms of its area. It is blessed with fossil fuel hydrocarbon deposits. It is said to have the third largest known oil reserves in the world. It's one of the leading exporters of crude oil and natural gas. And this perfectly aligns with India's goal, with India's objective to diversify its energy sources. Given the continuing blockade at Hormuz Strait and India's dependency on oil and gas imports, diversifying our sources is critical, and Canada can be one of the reliable suppliers of oil and gas to India. Canada is also blessed with great hydroelectric potential. It is blessed with uranium deposits. And during Mark Carney's visit, India, Canada have signed a long-term uranium supply deal. Canada is one of the leading producers of uranium in the world, and this secures the required fuel to power our three-stage nuclear power program. India has entered into similar deals with Australia, Kazakhstan, Namibia, and Canada is one of the key partners which can be a reliable supplier. Because don't forget, even in 1950s, right after India's independence, Canada was one of the first countries to support and provide material and technology for our nuclear program, for our nuclear research. Of course, later on, as India pursued nuclear weapons, the relationship had taken a hit. But now things are different. Given how India is a responsible nuclear power, how India is committed towards the goal of non proliferation, Canada looks at India as a reliable nuclear state and is very keen to partner with India in this critical domain. The long term uranium supply deal, which has been signed, can secure reliable supplies of uranium to ensure that we can focus on our nuclear energy goals. See, right now, the nuclear power plants in India, they account for an installed capacity of roughly 9 gigawatts. Now, the goal that has been set by 2047 under the Viksit Bharat ambition is to achieve an installed nuclear capacity of 100 gigawatts, which basically means we have to increase our nuclear capacity by 10 times from the current 9 gigawatts to 100 gigawatts in just around 20 plus years. So this will require regular, reliable uranium supplies as India is deficient in uranium deposits. So Canada can be that key partner. Canada is also blessed with critical and rare earth minerals. It is said to have almost all the critical strategic minerals, from lithium to cobalt to copper. And it can be one of the reliable suppliers that can help India reduce its dependency on China controlled supply chains. Canada is also blessed with forest resources. It is a leader in critical emerging technologies, in innovation. It is pioneering advances in artificial intelligence, in semiconductors, in quantum computing, in clean and renewable energy. So there are multiple common areas where India, Canada can work together. For Canada, India can be a great market, right? Canada is very keen to enter the Indian market, to create market access for Canadian products and Canadian companies. And also, don't forget, there are a lot of Indian companies that have invested in the Canadian economy. Several Indian companies, especially IT firms and firms in the field of finance and other key sectors, they have big investments in Canada, creating jobs in Canada. So India also contributes to the Canadian economy. India supplies key goods and commodities and services to Canada as well. And Canada has one of the largest pension funds, a sovereign pension fund, which is keen on investing in stable, fast growing economies like India. So, Canadian pension funds can bring in the much needed foreign investment, be it in the form of FDI or in the form of portfolio investment into our capital markets. India, as it seeks further foreign investment to power its growth, to power its infrastructure creation, funds such as Canadian sovereign pension funds can be a great source. That is why India Canada today are negotiating a free trade agreement, the CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. This FTA negotiation had been stalled by the previous Canadian government under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as the relationship had taken a massive hit. Now, the new Prime Minister Mark Carney has restarted the dialogue, and both countries are likely to finalize the CEPA by 2026. By the end of this year, most likely India Canada FTA will be signed. And the goal is to ensure a bilateral trade volume of $50 billion by 2030. The potential is definitely there. it is possible to achieve the target given the scale of trade between the two countries and the potential that exists in both markets for each other. Taking this trade to $50 billion by 2030 is definitely achievable with a free trade agreement. So, why was this critical relationship affected then? This relationship has been affected primarily on the Khalistan issue. Canada has become a fertile ground for Khalistani extremist activities. We had seen this back in 1980s as well. Few extremist radicalized elements within the Sikh diaspora. They had essentially capitalized on the support they would get in Canada to create a safe haven for Khalistani terrorist organizations, be it Babar Khalsa International, Khalistan Tiger Force, Khalistan Commando Force, the International Sikh Youth Federation. Many such Khalistani terrorist organizations have managed to flourish, and thus Canada has often been seen as a safe haven for Khalistani terrorists. Several criminal gangsters as well from the organized criminal world who have close links with Khalistani terrorists are known to operate from Canada, running drug trafficking networks, arms trafficking networks, extortion and contract killing uh, networks. So, this poses a very serious threat to India's national security. Generally, Western governments have been not very keen to cooperate with India to counter Khalistan and the extremism related to this movement. We had seen this in 1980s as well, which eventually led to the bombing of Air Kanishka, Air India flight coming from Canada to India that was blown up by Babar Khalsa international terrorists, killing all the passengers and crew. And at that point, it was the biggest terror attack on a civilian passenger aircraft before the 9/11 attacks. It was only after that Canada gave some cooperation to India because these countries, even US and a few West European countries, they would often defend this under freedom of speech and expression, saying that even minority groups, they have a right to dissent, they have a right to express their views. But this was not any peaceful demonstration that the groups were carrying out. This was pure violent extremism and terrorism and a direct attack on India's sovereignty that these outfits were involved in. But still, many Western governments, including UK, at one point Germany, Italy, and France as well, they would not really cooperate with India, significantly affecting our ties with these governments. But as India had put down the movement by late 1980s and early 1990s, Khalistan movement had become a dormant issue. But now we are seeing active attempts to revive this movement, especially since 2010. And there is again a direct Pakistani involvement. This has been part of Pakistan's covert proxy war against India. We had seen this in 1970s and 80s as well, where Pakistan had sheltered these groups, given direct support across the border, pumping drugs into Punjab from Afghanistan, and extending support to the diaspora as well to try and radicalize the community. So we are seeing repeat attempts by the ISI to try and revive the dormant Khalistan movement. So as the Khalistani activities started surging, India-Canada relations started taking a hit. In fact, few years ago, when Justin Trudeau visited India, it is especially Trudeau's party, whenever they have been in power, that these issues have often come up because the Trudeau party often relies on support from the Sikh vote bank, and this has become a vote bank politics in Canadian politics. So Justin Trudeau, when he was on a visit to India a few years ago, he brought a convicted Khalistani terrorist as part of his official delegation. He was part of the International Sikh Youth Federation, and he was involved in the attempted assassination of a state minister in the Punjab government back in 1980s. He had later fled from India, taken refuge in Canada, become a businessman. Now, Justin Trudeau, though the Canadian government was aware that he is a convicted terrorist, he was being brought to India as part of an official business delegation. So this really worried India. India downgraded the relations since then. And in 2023, Justin Trudeau did something which was unthinkable. After the G20 summit, Justin Trudeau went on to make serious allegations against the Indian government, alleging that India was involved directly in the covert assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a designated terrorist under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, the chief of Khalistan Tiger Force. So Canada alleged that intelligence operatives of India's RAW Research and Analysis Wing were reportedly involved in the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar with the help of organized criminal networks hired to carry out the assassination. India outright rejected these allegations, stating that we don't have a policy of carrying out such extrajudicial assassinations. So, following this, the relations took a big hit. Canada said they had evidence from the US and the Five Eyes Alliance initiative, indicating that they had solid intelligence to link the killing with Indian intelligence agencies. So India firmly rejected the allegations, and this led to the complete breakdown in the relationship. Justin Trudeau suspended the FTA negotiations as a retaliatory move, as they saw this as an attack on Canadian sovereignty, because Hardeep Singh Nijjar was a Canadian citizen at that point. Then India downgraded the relations, recalled the diplomats, and even stopped the visa and consular services. So the entire relationship had taken a nosedive since 2023. But now with Trudeau gone and a new government in power, new prime minister in power, Mark Carney is seen as a more pragmatic and a more friendly leader. So the relationship has been slowly turned around in the last few months. Last year, Canada invited India as a guest country for the G7, right? And Canada, being a member of G7, also makes it a critical partner for India. So this started repairing the relationship, and now Mark Carney visiting India earlier this year, and India's Minister for Commerce and Industry, Piyush Goyal, visiting Canada to kickstart the FTA talks. And there are reports that we will finalize the FTA very soon, probably in another few months. So within 2026, we'll have a free trade agreement as well. So this revives the possibility of a strong India-Canada relationship. This can be mutually beneficial, right? Even Canada has committed to help India to deal with Khalistan extremism. We do have a counter-terrorism agreement for intelligence sharing, and India expects Canada to deliver on this commitment. So if this issue is addressed, and if both sides can work this issue separately, the other aspects of the relationship has a great deal of potential that could benefit both the sides. Because Canada also wants to play a big role in the Indo-Pacific. Canada also looks at China as a serious threat in the Indo-Pacific. And India can be the perfect partner for Canada to counter China in the Indo-Pacific. So this is what you need to learn from the article. And please take up this mains practice question for your answer writing. Now let's move to the next topic. On page 7, there's a detailed column on teenage unwanted pregnancy and the kind of complications, legal and ethical complications it can create, and the impact on society. How are we dealing with this as a society, as a nation? What is the government's approach? What is the legal framework here? That is something which is being explored in this very important article. The writer here is referring to a recent incident involving two minors, a minor girl of 15 years and her partner of 17 years. So both were in a consensual sexual relationship. And as it turns out, the minor girl got pregnant and she wasn't even aware of it. It was only after the mother noticed a bump, only then the parents figured out that their minor girl was already pregnant. She was just 15 years old, carrying a child, and by the time the pregnancy was detected, it was already too late for medical termination. It was already too late for abortion. Because under the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, 24 weeks is the limit, beyond which Supreme Court's direct intervention becomes necessary, only if there are exceptional circumstances. Because beyond 24 weeks, the fetus becomes viable. In the 36-week gestation period, right? Beyond 24 weeks, any termination of pregnancy is considered dangerous for the mother as well. And the fetus would have become viable, meaning the fetus has a chance to survive. Now, in this particular case, which has grabbed national headlines as well, involving two minor um, partners, where the minor girl got pregnant in a consensual sexual relationship. And then the parents approached the Supreme Court because the pregnancy was beyond 24 weeks, entering the 28th week. And the Supreme Court recognizes the reproductive autonomy of the minor girl, because the minor girl, who was under severe stress, who had been traumatized by this incident, reportedly even attempted two suicides. So, keeping her mental state, her well being in mind, the Supreme Court swung towards the side of reproductive autonomy of the girl and ordered for medical termination. And the girl is right now in the 28th week of her pregnancy, where the fetus has become viable. Now, there are two issues to examine over here. One, the rising cases of teenage unwanted pregnancy in the country. How do you deal with it, right? As a government, as a society, as a legal system, how do you handle that? Second, on the other side, look at the plight of the doctors who have to carry out the medical termination here, right? They are being put in an ethical dilemma. On one side, doctors have an obligation to prioritize the safety of the mother, right? But once the fetus becomes viable, when court is ordering termination of pregnancy in the 28th week, there is a very high chance that they have to deliver the baby, and the baby might be born with severe complications because it would be a premature birth, which is basically a medically induced termination. So the doctors have a responsibility towards saving the life of this infant as well. So the AIMS doctors, they appealed in front of the Supreme Court that don't order the termination of this pregnancy, let the child be born, give it 6 more weeks. Because right now, if you medically induce termination, the child that's going to be born will suffer from a lot of conditions, comorbidities, and physical deformities, which is going to cripple the child for life. So the doctors of AIMS appealed to the Supreme Court to not allow for medical termination at this stage. But however, the Supreme Court rejected the appeal of the doctors, and it has prioritized the reproductive autonomy of the minor girl. Now, this is a very sensitive, delicate issue. Yes, the minor girl need not go through the trauma of bearing a child at 15 years of age. At the same time, the doctors also need not be put through this dilemma where they have to deliver a viable fetus, right? Where they are obligated to save the life of the mother as well as they have an obligation towards the infant who's going to be born. So, who should be blamed? Will you blame the Supreme Court? Will you blame the doctors? Will you blame the minor girl? Will you blame the partner? Will you blame the parents? No, the blame lies with our system. The system which does not talk about teenage sex. The society which has made sex a taboo, which doesn't talk about adolescent sex, which doesn't prioritize sex education. That is the problem. That is exactly what the writer is also trying to highlight. In an orthodox society, parents hesitate to talk to their children about sex and sex education or safe sexual practices. Topics like menstruation, masturbation, sex, pregnancy, these are all taboo topics, not just within the household, but even in the legal system, within the government as well. Look at the kind of laws that we have. If you look at POCSO, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, any sexual relationship involving minors is treated as a criminal offense, even if it is consensual. According to studies, a number of POCSO cases are actually consensual cases of sexual relations between two minor children. See, across the world, studies have shown that teenagers, adolescents who are curious, they will end up getting into consensual sexual relationships. No law, no ban or prohibition can prevent that from happening. But when you have such laws and when you don't have adequate sex education in the country, starting in your schools, starting in your home, that's where unwanted teenage pregnancies will come up. For example, look at how condom ads are banned in India between 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. how ridiculous this is when condoms are necessary to ensure safe sex, to avoid unwanted pregnancies, to prevent sexually transmitted diseases. We have a government which has essentially banned condom ads between 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. in the daytime so that children should not see that. The ones who should be seeing a condom ad are children, right? That is what is needed. That is exactly what the writer is also talking about. The hesitance to talk about adolescent sex, the hesitance to talk about one's reproductive rights is something which is creating this situation. You can't blame the teenage couple. You can't blame the parents. You can't blame the courts. You can't blame the doctors. The blame lies with the whole system, which has treated sex and reproductive rights as a taboo subject. And unless and until this is addressed, these issues, these cases will keep recurring. And under POCSO, it is usually the, the male who will suffer immensely, as it could lead to rape charges. Generally, the parents of the girl child will end up pushing rape charges on the boy. Could be a minor boy or could be an adult as well. But pushing for criminal prosecution in consensual sexual relationship is the heights of injustice. Right? Data again shows a significant percentage of POCSO cases are actually not genuine, meaning they were in a consensual sexual relationship. Just because the parents of the girl are opposing it, they will file a POCSO case which will result in a rape charge against the boy. So it's high time to get rid of these laws and promote safe sex and sex education and talk about adolescent sex. So that is the lesson that we take away from this article, which can be relevant for governance, can be relevant for society, for ethics as well. Now let's look at the smaller articles in the paper today. Nepal's new Prime Minister Balendra Shah has triggered a huge storm in Nepal's parliament. In a discussion on the India-Nepal border issue, Nepal's Prime Minister has said that Nepal is also in occupation of some parts of Indian territory. Now, this is a very controversial statement on both sides of the border, right? It's controversial on the Indian side as well. It's controversial on the Nepali side of the border as well. When it comes to India-Nepal border dispute, there are two locations, Kala Pani and Susta. These are the two known disputed sites. And here Nepal accuses India of occupying Nepalese territory, whereas India claims and controls Kala Pani and Susta. So this is what we have known. But now Balendra Shah comes and tells Nepal's parliamentarians that, look, it's not just India which is occupying our territory. That's their allegation. He's saying that Nepal also has occupied some part of Indian territory, encroached upon some part of Indian territory. Now, this is where first you need to look at the India-Nepal border dispute, where exactly it is located, what's the reason behind the dispute, and then examine the claims being made by Balendra Shah. The Kalapani region is this triangular belt located at the tri-junction of India, Nepal, and China. It's administered as part of Pithoradgarh district of Uttarakhand, meaning India has total control over it, right from Limpiadhura all the way till the strategic Lipu Lake Pass that connects India with China. Lipu Lake, as you know, is one of the routes for Kailash Manasarovar Yatra as well. Now, the boundary here between India and Nepal was drawn as per the Treaty of Sugoli of 1816. So it's a British era blunder, a colonial blunder. So when British India defeated the Kingdom of Nepal in the Anglo-Nepalese Wars, the conflict was brought to an end through the Treaty of Sugoli in 1816, which drew the boundaries between Nepal and British India. So while drawing the boundary, the British used the Kali River as the reference to identify the geographical boundary. So post-independence, India and Nepal have inherited the same boundaries. But in the higher reaches of the Kali, India and Nepal have a different interpretation of what is the source of the Kali River. According to India's interpretation, one of the tributaries that's located towards the east is considered as the boundary. So India claims the whole of Kalapani, including Lipu Lake and Limpiadhura. Nepal has a counterclaim. Nepal claims one of the westernmost tributaries of Kali, and it claims this entire triangular belt to itself. So for many decades, this was always a minor border dispute. Since India and Nepal had in general, they had good relations. It was never a major issue between both sides. This issue was unnecessarily aggravated since 2016 under anti-India leaders like KP Sharma Oli. KP Sharma Oli and his party, the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist faction, which is often seen as a pro-China party and anti-India party, was primarily behind the escalation of the boundary dispute. Later in 2019 and 20, when KP Oli again became the Prime Minister of Nepal, he opposed the new maps that were published by India. Because in 2019, India had altered the status of J&K by abrogating Article 370 and reorganized J&K into two union territories. So a new political map was published to show JK and Ladakh as two union territories. So when this new political map was published, the KP Oli government objected to the map as it showed Kalapani region as part of Indian territory. Then, under the KP Oli government, they even adopted a constitutional amendment to amend Nepal's map to show Kalapani region as Nepal's territory. They even brought out a currency note showing Kalapani and Susta region as Nepalese territory. So such repeated provocations have continued from the Nepali side, especially when anti-India leaders like KP Oli have come into power. Now we have a new government under Balendra Shah. India is hoping to keep these issues aside, resolve them through talks and negotiations. And we don't want unnecessary escalation on this particular issue. The Susta dispute is along the Terai belt between the borders where Bihar and Nepal are located. This again goes back to Treaty of Sugauli. Treaty of Sugauli of 1816 identified the Gandak or the Narayani River as the boundary. And whatever was on the left bank was supposed to be Nepal's territory. On the other side of the bank was supposed to be Indian territory. But as you know, Himalayan rivers, they meander, they change course over a period of time. Now, the Susta, the place Susta that you see here, which previously was on the other bank, has now shifted due to the changing course of the river. So, it falls on the Indian side, but Nepal still claims it. So these are issues which can be resolved easily, provided if both sides can sit and talk. But as long as we have a responsible, mature leadership on the other side. So now you have Balendra Shah, a very young prime minister following the Gen Z protests, where leaders like KP Oli were thrown out. And he makes a statement that it's not just India, even Nepal has encroached on Indian territory. So what is this encroachment? Has Nepal really occupied some part of Indian territory? See, as of now, whatever we know, there is no such Nepali occupation of Indian land. What he was referring to is essentially the no man's land that exists along the open border. See, India and Nepal have an open border, right? We don't have hard border controls. As per the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1950, we provide for free movement of people, vehicles, and goods. That's why you don't need a visa to visit Nepal and vice versa. So in the no man's land, which is roughly 150 meters, 150 yards from the actual boundary line, there are several locations where Nepali farmers, they might have encroached on a very small part of Indian land. Because in some places, the boundary may not be correctly demarcated. There may not be a physical demarcation or a fencing as it's an open border. So there are certain places where Nepali farmers or the local villagers, they might have extended their property into the no man's land onto the Indian side. So such occurrences will be present along any international border. That is what Balendra Shah is referring to. Maybe that shows his inexperience as well, right? He's a very young prime minister, right? And interestingly, an alumnus of my college as well. So probably he has not been advised properly, but it has triggered a political storm. Later, Nepal's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has clarified that the prime minister was referring to such encroached land by local farmers where without their knowledge, they might have extended into Indian territory. Similarly, on the Indian side as well, this could have happened. Indian farmers or Indian villagers also might have extended their property slightly onto the Nepali side. So this is what we call cross-border occupation. It's technically referred to as cross-border occupation. So it doesn't mean the other country has deliberately occupied someone else's territory, right? It's about the local discrepancies that might exist at the grassroots level, where locals might have extended their property onto the other side without their knowledge, right? Now, another big development, the AUKUS deal has been revised. What is AUKUS? AUKUS was announced in 2021 as a trilateral security partnership between US, UK, and Australia. So, under the deal, there were two phases. In phase one, US and UK, which are close allies of Australia, they were supposed to supply nuclear powered attack submarines to strengthen the Australian Navy and its deterrence capability in the Indo-Pacific. So this was clearly aimed at China. So phase one of AUKUS that was announced in 2021 was clearly aimed at deterring the Chinese PLA Navy, which often ventures into South Pacific. Australia is dealing with a heightened threat due to Chinese naval incursions. So US and UK committed under the deal that they would help Australia procure nuclear powered attack submarines to strengthen its underwater capability. The second phase would involve cooperation in critical emerging technologies like AI, quantum computing, hypersonic missiles, etc. Advanced electronic warfare. So all these critical emerging technologies are part of the second phase of the cooperation. Now, until now, it was believed that under phase one, US was supposed to transfer two old nuclear powered attack submarines and one brand new nuclear attack submarine. This was supposed to be the deal. It was supposed to supply two old Virginia class used submarines of US Navy to be handed over to Australian Navy and one brand new nuclear powered submarine built by US in collaboration with UK. But now at Shangri-La dialogue, which is currently ongoing in Singapore, US, UK, Australia have announced the revised terms of the deal that Australia will not be getting any new submarine. No new submarine is going to be supplied by the US. 3 submarines will be provided, but all 3 will be old Virginia class submarines which have already been used by US Navy, which already exists in the US Navy stock. So 3 old used nuclear powered submarines are going to be provided to Australia. Australia has agreed to it. Australia says it is a cost saving measure. It is to cut down the cost because acquiring a new submarine would have been very expensive. But however, it raises questions about American commitments, particularly under Donald Trump. Right? These commitments were made previously under the Biden administration. Now the question is, has the Trump administration gone back on the commitment? So this could have lessons for India as well, that you can't really rely on US as a trusted security partner. Correct? And also US is prioritizing its own naval expansion. As US Navy is getting outdated, it's facing an incredible challenge with Chinese naval expansion. Chinese Navy is fast advancing and US Navy is trying to catch up. So probably it's because of that. It's because of that the US would like to prioritize its own naval modernization rather than helping allies like Australia. But this holds key lessons for India that you can't blindly trust a foreign partner to help in your security and military modernization. Now coming to the prelim section, let's take a quick look. On page 5, there's an article referring to beta-carotene or beta-carotene. A study at the Banaras Hindu University has found out that desi ghee can be easily adulterated using this dyeing pigment or color pigment, which is found in carrots. Beta-carotene is found in a number of fruits and vegetables. That's what gives the natural orange, the reddish orange tint and the dye, the color. So this compound can be extracted and the very same spectral properties of desi ghee can be mimicked by using this compound called beta-carotene. The fear is that when it comes to desi ghee's adulteration, see, original desi ghee is produced from cow milk or let's say even buffalo milk. and it has its unique distinct color, that light yellow color. Now, researchers have found out that using non-dairy fats, like let's say palm oil, which is very cheap compared to cow milk, right? Or compared to desi ghee, or lard, which is basically rendered pig fat. Using this, adulterated fake desi ghee can be produced with the same color, same appearance, and more importantly, the same spectral properties. See, our eyes can get easily deceived if the color and appearance is the same, right? You might believe palm oil to be ghee if the right color combination is used and the right texture is achieved. You might believe pig fat to be ghee if the right adulteration and manipulation is done. But you can't deceive spectral properties, right? So when it comes to food testing, there is a standard which is used called Raman spectroscopy. This can be a prelims question. Please make a note. It is named after C.V. Raman. Raman spectroscopy is used across the world by food regulators and food inspectors. So this spectrometry test, it basically analyzes the chemical properties, the crystalline structure, and as well as the purity of a substance. It is seen as a gold standard when it comes to testing food products. So when subjected to Raman spectroscopy, this fake version of ghee produced with coloration from beta-carotene, it depicts the exact spectral properties of desi ghee. So even if pig fat or palm oil is colored with beta carotene, a pigment drawn from carrots, which is quite cheap, right? Palm oil can be cheap. Lard can also be very cheap compared to desi ghee. So there is a potential market here for fake adulterated ghee to be sold. And that is the risk factor which is being flagged. So there can be a question related to Raman spectroscopy, right? It analyzes the spectral properties of food. It's widely used in food industry for food regulation. It can verify the molecular fingerprint. Each food item has its unique fingerprint. So it can bring out the crystalline structure, the chemical composition, and as well as the purity of the substance or the product. Then another important point for prelims is what is beta carotene, right? What are the sources? What are its benefits? This can be a science and tech question. As I said, it's the red orange pigment, a naturally occurring plant pigment found in a number of fruits and vegetables, not just carrot. You can find it in sweet potatoes, pumpkins, butternut squash, spinach, broccoli, kale, mangoes, apricot, cantaloupe. Generally, all the fruits and vegetables which tend to have a orangish, reddish tint, right? It's beta carotene which gives that hue. So this can be extracted, but this is very, very valuable from a healthcare and medical and cosmetic point of view because this is a precursor to vitamin A, that is primarily retinol. So this can have a transformative effect on human health. You know why they say carrots are good for your eye? It's because beta carotene, it has these unique properties. It is a precursor to retinol, which can improve your vision, improve your immunity, and that's why it is such a popular skincare product. It's an anti-aging product, right? You talk to any cosmetologist, dermatologist, they all swear by the efficacy of retinol in the right quantity, in the right form of application, right? It's known for its antioxidant properties, how it can neutralize harmful radicals, prevent the aging of your skin. The blemishes and the pigmentation that develops with age can be countered with retinol, and it comes from beta carotene, right? It has a lot of positive health benefits as well, from improving vision to immunity. It can also be used in sunscreens as well to prevent sun damage. So that is something you should be aware of. Next, the new Chief of Defense Staff, the third CDS of India, General N.S. Raja Subramani, has assumed office. So this is a big development. So what is the CDS? What does the CDS do? What is the role of CDS? See, till date, India has had two chiefs of defense staff. The first was Bipin Rawat, General Bipin Rawat from Indian Army. who unfortunately passed away while he was still in office as the CDS of India in a fatal helicopter crash. He was replaced by General Anil Chauhan, again from the Indian Army, became the second CDS, and now the third CDS, General NS Raja Subramani. So all the three chiefs of defense staff we have had, they've all been from Indian Army. So what is the role? When was this position created? The office of CDS was approved and established in 2019, and the first CDS was appointed by 2020. The Chief of Defense Staff acts as the permanent chairman of the Chief of Staff Committee. The CDS is the highest ranking military officer in the country, ranked even above your Army Chief, Navy Chief, and Air Force Chief. So the three service chiefs are part of the Chiefs of Staff Committee, and this committee is headed by a higher ranked officer, the CDS, acting as the permanent chair. But the CDS will not exercise operational control over Army, Navy, and Air Force. Operational command remains with the three service chiefs, but CDS performs a unique role. The CDS will drive jointness, will bring synergy between the forces, will bring operational unity between the three forces. And the CDS is tasked with promoting the concept of theaterization to create unified theater commands, to optimize the defense budget, to promote unified planning, and to bring synergy in joint operations involving the three services. So along with this role, the CDS performs a dual role. The CDS also acts as the secretary to a newly created department, the Department of Military Affairs, within the Ministry of Defense. The CDS, acting as a secretary to the Department of Military Affairs, will essentially work with Defense Ministry and the bureaucracy to streamline defense procurement, to optimize the defense budget. And the CDS will act as the single point military advisor to the government of India, that is to the Defense Minister of India. The CDS is also a member of the executive committee that's part of the Nuclear Command Authority, which advises the political committee headed by the PM in case of India going to a nuclear war. So the CDS is also one of the key members of the executive committee of the Nuclear Command Authority. And the CDS exercises total command control over the Strategic Forces Command, the SFC, which is a tri-service command that maintains operational control over India's nuclear arsenal. So this is the critical role performed by the Chief of Defense Staff. Along with this, India has also got a new Navy Chief. Admiral Krishna Swaminathan has taken office as the 27th Chief of Naval Staff. Of course, such topics previously would have been irrelevant, but now that UPSC is prioritizing security defense topics, even asking mundane facts, it's quite relevant to take a look at these developments as well. Next, on page 16, the Beaufort Castle in Lebanon is in news. Israeli defense forces have penetrated deep into southern Lebanon as far as the Litani River, and they have captured the historic and strategic Beaufort Castle and fort. So this fort that you can see in the image over here, it has a rich history behind it. You can see the location as well. This is the blue line that serves as the border between Israel and Lebanon, right, which is essentially monitored by the UNIFIL forces. There is a UN peacekeeping force monitoring the UN blue line between Israel and Lebanon and enforcing the ceasefire between them. But quite often, Israel has invaded into Lebanon, right? Back in 1982, Israel invaded and occupied southern Lebanon and retreated only in 2000, which created the fertile ground for Hezbollah to grow and thrive in Lebanon. Then later on, in 2005-2006 period, Israel had invaded Lebanon again to target Hezbollah. Now, since 2023, with the Gaza war starting, till 2026, with the Iran war, Israel has again invaded Lebanon at least a couple of times. So Israeli forces have breached the UN blue line. They have gone deep into southern Lebanon, crossing the Litani River, and they have taken the strategic Beaufort Castle and fort. This was previously captured by IDF in 1982 as well. right? It's a strategic position. This fort and castle, it overlooks the Litany River. And since many centuries, it has had a lot of military and strategic value. So there can be a map-based question or a history-based question related to the Beaufort Castle. It was completely modified, upgraded by the Crusaders in the 12th century. The fortifications existed even before 12th century, but during the Crusaders period, it was majorly revamped and fortified. Later on, it has passed different hands from the Saladin's Jerusalem army to Mamluk dynasty to the Ottomans, coming under the French mandate post World War One, and then being controlled by the Palestinian Liberation Organization after Israel had driven out the Palestinians post 1948, and finally being taken by Israeli forces in 1982. So, this strategic fort and castle has been controlled by different empires, different regimes, and as well as security forces. And that highlights the strategic value of this fortification that overlooks the Litany River. Next, the Padma Barrage proposed in Bangladesh is in news, another very important topic. Bangladesh has approved the construction of this barrage on the Padma River. The Padma River is nothing but the Ganga. The Ganga River, after crossing over from India to Bangladesh, becomes known as the Padma before it joins the Meghna river system. Right? The Meghna is a gigantic river system, a combination of the Ganga, Brahmaputra, which is known as Jamuna in Bangladesh, right? Then Teesta, Barak, all merge into the Meghna. So on the Bangladeshi side, the Ganga becomes the Padma. Now, Bangladesh always has had issues with one of India's barrages, the Faraka barrage in West Bengal on the Hooghly and the Ganga. India has constructed this barrage mainly to ensure the clearance of the silt and sediments deposited at the Kolkata port, and to ensure adequate supply of water and, for drinking and irrigation, right, in the West Bengal Bihar belt. And there's also a hydroelectric project over here. Now, this barrage has often been a source of dispute. Bangladesh complains that it has affected water flow. It brings a lot of silt and sediment and affected fish availability as well. Now, if you know, in Bengali cuisine, hilsa fish is a prized asset, and the shortage of hilsa has affected both West Bengal and Bangladesh as well. Now, Bangladesh is having a counter proposal. See, we have a Ganga water sharing treaty of 1996 that India had signed with the then Sheikh Hasina government. But this treaty is going to expire this year. So the Ganga water sharing treaty is going to end if it is not renewed. And now Bangladesh is proposing a similar barrage on the other side, on the Padma in Rajbari district. So Bangladesh is hoping that it can enhance the water availability, and it's also planning a hydroelectric project. But however, environmental activists are raising concerns that barrages are mindless projects. Generally, they tend to affect the water flow, they affect the ecology and the environment, they affect the fish. They also bring in uncontrolled sediment flow, which can create problems for agriculture. That's why around the world there is a trend, especially in Western countries, in US and Europe. They are removing these unscientific barrages and culverts. In fact, in 2025, just in last year alone, 21 European countries have removed 603 artificial barriers that were blocking the flow of rivers. So blocking rivers is seen as an outdated concept. But in South Asia, the practice continues. And this could also potentially become a source of diplomatic tensions between India and Bangladesh. Coming to the last article, there are two important terms that you can understand from this article. The article is referring to the James Webb Space Telescope, which has beautifully captured an exoplanet and its atmospheric weather. It has not only captured high resolution pictures of this exoplanet, right, but it has also helped understand the atmospheric weather and the temperature conditions present on this planet. This planet is named as WASP 94AB. It's a gas giant similar to our Jupiter. It is nearly 700 light years away. Massive in size, almost twice the size of Jupiter, but it's very light. It's a gas giant. So, though it's massive in size, its weight is much lesser. And what makes this exoplanet unique is that it's in a tidal lock. You understand the term tidal lock? Tidal lock is when a planetary object matches the rotation and its revolution speed. Both are same, like the moon, right? It's only one side of the moon that always faces the earth because it's in a tidal lock with the earth. Its rotation and revolution around the earth matches. That's why you can't see the other side of the moon. So when this happens with a planet, when a planet is in a tidal lock with its nearest star, it ends up heating one side of the planet to unimaginable levels, and the other side, the dark side of the planet, will be unimaginably cold. So that is the uniqueness of this exoplanet, WASP 94AB. On the bright side, the temperatures are so hot as measured by James Webb Space Telescope that it can even melt metal. On the other side, the temperature is so cold that it's always frozen and completely barren, right? Now, this article also refers to a massive project in astrophysics which is coming up called Extremely Large Telescope. So you should know which group of countries are building this telescope facility, where is it coming up, what is its purpose. This again can be a prelims topic. The Extremely Large Telescope will be the world's biggest optical telescope, and it's coming up in the South American country of Chile, in the Antofagasta province in northern Chile. This is where European countries are building the project. It's a European scientific project led by European Southern Observatory Agency. So EU countries are setting up this massive telescope, which is all set to be the world's largest optical telescope and mid-infrared telescope. So it will further our understanding of the cosmos. So just take a note of the Extremely Large Telescope. Now, coming to the PIB article, which I was mentioning at the start, there was this press release yesterday from Ministry of Culture, which talks about the sacred Buddhist relics that India has transported to Mongolia to hold an exposition in Mongolia. The Indian Air Force has airlifted the sacred relics. These relics, they are believed to belong to two of the most important disciples of Lord Gautam Buddha. Lord Gautam Buddha is said to have had two most important disciples, Arhant or Arhat Sariputta, Arhant Mahamoggallana. So their relics are preserved in the National Museum, and even archaeological findings, historical, mythological accounts point towards the relics belonging to the two disciples of Lord Gautam Buddha. So India has transported these relics to hold the Vessels of Light exposition at the Gadan Tengchengling Monastery in Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. So this is an example of our Buddhist diplomacy, how we leverage our Buddhist heritage to project influence, our soft power influence across Asian countries. We have held similar Buddhist expositions in Sri Lanka, in Bhutan, where the Piprava relics were displayed by India. Piprava relics are believed to be the relics of Lord Gautam Buddha himself. Now, we have transported the relics of Buddha's chief disciples to Mongolia. So please make a note, and this could also be very important under culture and international relations. So that is it for today. With this, we conclude the session. I hope it was an interesting and useful discussion. If you benefited, do press the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.